Welcome one and all to the Schmoeville after show, the after show for all of your Collider video and Schmoes Know content. I am your host, Ryan Snelling.
And I'm Brian Davids, and my American accent does not prevent me from saying one of my favorite verbs, dote, which means to be extremely and uncritically fond of someone or something. The archaic definition means to be silly or feeble-minded, especially as a result of old age.
Brian, guess what I have sitting right beside me right now?
Qdoba.
No, I have a glass, a magic hat glass filled with apple cider vinegar and water.
Huh. Interesting. That was not what I was expecting.
This was a segue into talking about Josh Macuga, but it's also a way for me to inform you that I've been battling mucus all week, and I've been downing this stuff. But while doing it, I have been thinking of Josh Macuga the entire time because, you know, he's a friend of the show, right?
Friend of the show, Josh Macuga, had such a good time on our show last weekend that he decided to propose to his girlfriend the very next day. Clearly, burying the hatchet with our show was the one thing holding him back from a lifelong commitment. So, how about that, Snelling?
It's so natural of you to take credit for Josh Macuga's proposal, his future wedding. So she has us to thank, essentially. Is that what you're saying?
We are a matchmaker. We got him over the hump. He could not commit to a lifetime until he got this one itch scratched, and that was the Schmoeville After Show.
I was going to say, we're not quite matchmakers because we didn't introduce them, but
we're wedding makers.
We are the inciting incident in the marriage of Josh Macuga, and I forgot her name. Can you remember her name? Amanda, thank you very much. Sorry, I don't have Instagram up right now.
It's interesting. Neither do I, but for some reason I remembered. But you know what's interesting? Go back and listen to our interview knowing that he's going to propose the very next day. It changes the entire context of the interview.
It's like watching A New Hope right after you've listened to or watched Rogue One.
Wow, it's a great point.
We've both seen Rogue One twice now, right?
We have. We definitely have.
How did you feel about wasn't it just so much fun, the Star Wars coverage? We talked a little bit about it last week on the show. It was kind of happening as we were recording. But just overall, we'll probably get into it more, but I really enjoyed the Star Trek coverage throughout the entire week. It was so much fun.
The Star Trek coverage?
Did I say Trek?
You said Trek.
Star Wars. Sorry.
Clearly Scott Mance and Jason Inman have invaded this show.
Oh, that's what it was. I was looking at my paper notebook. Yeah, my notes are out. Team Trek. That's what it was.
At your parchment.
Yeah, my tapestry, my ink and quill, if you will. And that was so much fun, mainly because, and they talked about it a little bit, but I'm really happy for that entire group, mainly Kristian and Mark, because they're right. Who would have thought that these guys would have been in this position, let alone provided us with such fun content, great pictures of them at the premiere. I'm happy for them, and I'm also glad that we got a pretty good movie out of it, but we're not going to talk about that. We don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. Yeah, did you have kudos to you, by the way, on finishing up that Macuga interview. That was a fun listen. I think everyone enjoyed it. The only thing I didn't enjoy is the fact that we were pushing the length of a Lord of the Rings movie on the episode. But other than that, it was a lot of fun listening to you guys chat and to getting to know more about Macuga. And I'm so happy that we're friends now.
Hey, no one's saying you have to listen to our podcast in one sitting. Why not savor it over several days?
And, you know, the timestamps are in the description now, so that helps with the easy listening as well, but that's just my preference to not have long podcasts, so I understand both. I understand both sides. I feel like we benefit both, but what were you going to say? We both kind of we took a breath at the same time. What'd you got?
It's amazing that you noticed that, but I want to do some housekeeping from last week. I talked about a moment on Movie Talk, where Ashley referred to Jeremy as Riley. She said, "Thanks, Riley." And basically, here's what happened. Jeremy was complimenting a turn of phrase that Ashley said in regards to Transformers. And she thanked Riley because Riley obviously is the person who wrote such notes that Jeremy was complimenting. So it was kind of a confusing moment because Ashley was addressing Jeremy, and obviously she was speaking to Riley, who wrote the show. So I should have put it together sooner, but that mystery is now solved. So it was intentional on Ashley's part. The second point I wanted to follow up on is the fact that RB3 confirmed that they do not hear the music in the studio thanks to the new gear that they have. So we had some questions about that last week. And my last point, someone corrected me, and I kind of knew this was going to come back to me. I compared Mike Kalinowski to a lesser-known actor by the name of Aaron Tveit, only I called him Aaron Tveit. And I said to myself, you know what? There's no way anyone's going to know the exact pronunciation of his name. I'm not going to bother to look it up just to make sure. Well, sure enough, someone knew the correct pronunciation of Aaron Tveit's last name, and they called me on it. So there you go. It's Aaron Tveit. Imagine hearing me say Aaron Tveit for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. That's how I feel about all these names that I correctly pronounce every week for the crew.
There are a lot of things that go in one ear and out the other with me, and I love that about myself. But I do not recall in the least you comparing Mike Kalinowski to that actor.
Well, first I said he looked like Justin Theroux, but then I went on a bit, and he said, yeah, he looks kind of like that guy Aaron Tveit. I said Tveit. He was on Grease Lab. He was on a show called Graceland, but yeah, who knew that the most unlikely corrections would come from that?
Was that on the? That might have been on the ultimate cut of our Schmoeville episode. Maybe that's
there. You go.
Maybe that's
the
why
ultimate edition.
Sure. Okay, we got the housekeeping and the corrections out of the way. Do you want to dive into the Collider content, starting with Monday's movie talk?
Yeah, this was Rogue One reactions. They didn't dive in too deep because the embargo was still up, but they could give their social media reactions. At the time that I checked, this was up to like 160,000 views. It's probably even higher right now, but just shows you what certain subjects can do as far as view count. We had our crew of Mark, Ellis, Campia, and Jeremy. And, of course, the live chat, I went to go close it. As soon as I went to go close it, a giant Rogue One spoiler popped up and ruined the movie for me.
Oh, man.
So that was the start of my week. I go out of my way to avoid spoilers, and that's what kicked things off.
Man, you have to tell me after the show what it was.
Sure thing.
Right away, just a small point. I thought the lighting looked much better on Movie Talk. I know that's just like the smallest thing, but it looked really, really pro this week, more than usual. I know that they had the issue going to 720p. There have been some episodes that the color looks a bit off and the maybe slightly overexposed, but this week looked more pro than usual. I thought it actually looked like we were actually seeing it in 1080p. The lighting changes a lot, more than people think, but I just thought it looked really good. Speaking of...
I meant to say Mark, Kristian, Campia, Jeremy. I said Mark, Ellis, Campia, Jeremy. Obviously, one of those was meant to be Kristian, and maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was Christian's great tan. I don't know.
I was about to ask you, do you think Kristian got a tan for the premiere?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. As someone who has gotten tans before for certain events, I can sniff those things out rather quick.
And, Kristian, I just want to let you know, I'm noticing the new wardrobe. You look fantastic, buddy.
The sweater. I told you, the sweater game, man. The jackets, the sweaters. I don't know. Something's gotten into our boy.
He wore that nice blue shirt on the Schmoes Know Show. He had that Henley shirt, whatever, his Dexter costume. I mean, he's looking pretty good. It's pretty good. Nicely done, Harloff. Nicely done. You brought up the YouTube comments section.
Live chat.
Live chat, excuse me. I want to talk about the Bazinga guy. That was one of the funniest moments that I can recall on Movie Talk was Bazinga guy tweeted into the show, and Campea just absolutely shit on what the guy said, and Kristian lost it. And
oh, right. The Oscar nomination question.
Oh my God, that was so damn funny.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my God, that was great. I loved it. And I know that, like, I loved it because he was kind of being an asshole about it.
Kristian had a couple of those big laughs this week. I can't remember the other one, but there were a couple moments where he basically lost it.
And I think it might have been last week or the week before where I said that it's such a privilege to make Mark Ellis laugh, or it means a lot if you make Mark Ellis laugh, because I really enjoy his laugh. Anyway, I want to kind of go back on that statement because I think Kristian is more of an accomplishment now that I'm thinking about it, because I hear him laugh less. What's great about Kristian and Mark's relationship is that they've been doing this for so long. Kristian knows, like, Ellis's act, his get up. When Ellis makes a joke, if you look at Kristian when Ellis makes a joke and is being funny, it doesn't even faze him in the least.
Exactly.
Like, he is so over Ellis's humor, or at least he maybe just understands it.
He's used to it.
Yeah, so I think
he's conditioned to it.
Right, he's conditioned to it. I think it's funny that Kristian doesn't even wince or crack or anything when Ellis makes a joke. But Kristian, you're right. Kristian does not laugh as much. I don't think I've ever made that guy laugh. I have attempted so many times, and he's never ever given me a ha-ha or an LOL. So I will cherish the day that I finally make Kristian Harloff laugh.
I must say I've gotten a couple out of him, but yes, it is very difficult. It does feel like an accomplishment when it does happen. And Campea, to give him credit, he had a funny line this week in regards to Josh's engagement to Amanda. He said, "Blink twice if you need help." He went on this long kind of rant about it, and he closed with "Blink twice if you need help." And he said it in this rather serious way, and I thought he played it pretty well. But speaking of John Campea...
Uh-oh.
Last week I talked a great deal about how he's been shading Arrival.
He did.
And the first thing he did on Monday was shade Kristian's point about Arrival being a bona fide hit. Kristian basically took my point from this show about Arrival doing so well and it having a $47 million budget. Kristian brought up that budget point, and Campea instantly chimed in with, "No, it's an $85 million budget." And so it created this big ordeal on the show, especially in the live chat, because a lot of the chatters knew that it only cost $47 million. So for about the next 20 minutes, the chatters are basically saying 47, 47 nonstop. And then Campea finally addressed it and said, "You know what, guys? I was looking at the Allied budget, which was $85 million. So props to Campea for correcting himself, but it kind of bothers me, though, that his first instinct was, again, to take away credit from Arrival, because, as I said last week, he's going out of his way to not really give that film the credit that it deserves.
Yeah, the only thing that Kristian didn't do is wink at the camera, because it was like I was listening to you talk on that show. I just heard that conversation come out of your mouth, and yeah.
That's funny, because he gave me the wink face in our DMs as a result of that. So,
what else happened on Monday? I'm still not convinced at all. I don't know how we haven't talked about this yet. 2 large popcorns in a movie is way too damn much. I don't know what theater he goes to. I don't know what their larges look like. But every time Ellis says that he gets 2 large popcorns, I do not believe him. That is way too damn much.
Let's be accurate here. He says 2 large corns. He is trying to make corn like the new fetch. He's trying to make it into fetch, like it's Mean Girls. He's trying to make that term play so hard, and it never catches on with anybody else but him, the corn term.
He does that with a couple things. Also, he still is holding on to the term yucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He does that a couple times. And they address, I guess we kind of skipped over this because it actually came out on Sunday, even though I thought it should have come out on Monday. You probably have a point on the crash course. But it does correlate into Monday's TV Talk in a way. Did you want to throw out your crash course commentary real quick?
Yeah, I mean, they dropped it on Sunday. Obviously, that's much earlier than usual. Jeremy continued the fun this week, and as of right now, it's got about 32.5 thousand. And they kind of changed the way the playlists look. They have commentary specials and editorials, and they basically put everything under this now, whether it's commentaries, whether it's crash courses. So there's no longer a Collider crash course playlist. So I thought that was notable. But how did this translate into this episode for you?
So, but what basically happened, and I caught this in the comments section because I'm not the most educated Star Wars fan. I try, but there was a mistake in the video when they were talking about the character Shock T, and there was a mention of the species Twi'lek, and I believe it was through a picture. They showed a picture of a Twi'lek, but it wasn't Shock T. I think that's what happened. Don't correct me in the comments. Just whatever. You all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, basically it was incorrect portrayal of what Shock T is as a species, and the comment section was going crazy about how the video misinformed. But I think it was Kristian said that it was purely just a picture. I asked him if they were going to take Crash Course down, and he acted like that was a dumb question, and they have no interest in taking it down. So we're just gonna have to live with that mistake. They don't mind it. I mean, I don't really mind it. Some people seem to, but they
was the picture of Allied's budget of $85 million.
Right. Yeah, that's what it was. But how that played into movie talk was they addressed it, and Kristian used his troll voice, and he didn't quote me word for word, but he pretty much quoted my concern for the crash course in his troll voice. So that was his reference to me, if you will, on the movie talk episode. So
I had no idea this happened, but now I'm going to go back and check it out. But yeah, that's interesting because that's the kind of the downside about these crash courses. If there is a mistake, the mistakes loom even larger because they're crash courses.
Yeah, I think it was a valid question. I mean, I don't feel stupid for asking Kristian that, because I mean, that's the whole point of the video, is to inform. And I mean, someone like me, you know this, you know that I'm not going to think it's a big deal. but some people certainly did. I mean, it's a valid concern, I think, for what's supposed to be an informational video. But yeah, they're just gonna let it be a mistake and move on. So there's that.
Should we get to Tuesday?
Tuesday. You want to go to Tuesday's movie talk? Is that what you mean?
Of course.
This was the day. Remind me. Okay, so let's talk about this.
It's Campia, Ellis, Jeremy, Schnepp.
We were hesitant to even watch this movie talk because of what was in the title. They talked about, or it says that it's the Rogue One review of Movie Talk, or on Movie Talk, whatever.
Plus Campia tweeted out this big graphic that they were making this big spectacle review on Tuesday. And so I was like, okay, I can't tune in. I don't want to have any spoilers. And yet they barely addressed it during the show. They just addressed it a little bit during the opening this week segment. So they basically did a regular show with just a little bit of Rogue One talk mixed in. So we didn't have to come back to this episode later in the week like we both expected.
Right. And it ended up being fine. I mean, like you said, it was a regular episode of Movie Talk. Most of my Monday commentary doesn't involve the episode at all, so I didn't know what you had to say about it.
This kind of brought up a subject, though, that we talked about before, and I really wanted to avoid any non-spoiler Rogue One discussion because, as was the case with Civil War, you end up getting an idea of the film in your head, even from non-spoiler reviews. Like, you know how many action set pieces there are, which ones are the good ones, and based on Civil War discussion, we expected the airport scene to be the greatest action set piece of all time. And while it was good, it wasn't even my third favorite set piece in the film. So based on that experience, I went out of my way to listen to as little Rogue One discussion as possible, even non-spoiler talk. So I take it you followed suit.
Pretty much. And that plays into my other Tuesday point, which was that Campia released this video called The Top 5 Moments from the trailer that were not in the Rogue One film. And I want to ask what your opinion is on this video, because at first glance I looked at it and saw that Campea had done it, and my first instinct is what you just did. Why? I got a little angry because I'm wondering, why would anyone want to watch this when no one has seen the film yet, except for you guys? So you're basically telling us what isn't a part of the film. And
5 reasons that are going to disappoint you, or 5 things that will disappoint you, is ultimately what the video is saying.
And here's what I eventually arrived at. I did not watch that video until I saw the film, because I was just kind of like, okay, that's ridiculous. But the more time went on, the more I realized that I get it. And I think this kind of, I am someone who's learning, Brian Davids. I'm learning as a viewer. I'm learning as we do this podcast that sometimes just because I don't want to watch a particular video does not mean that it will not be a hit with someone else. It does not mean that it's actually not a great video for YouTube. I'm slowly but surely learning to follow suit, just let it go, and then watch it when I want to, sort of like the advice that you have given people when listening to our podcast. Hold off if you need to, listen to it when you're ready. So as time went on, I became less angry and understood why the video existed. I'm wondering if you agree with me.
No, I see your point. And because it's a Rogue One based video, obviously people are going to be interested. So the sooner they release it, the more views they can get. Obviously, a lot of people are not going to watch it until after they see the film. I understand from a content creator standpoint why they'd want to put this out there as soon as possible. But yeah, for the most part, most people do not want to know this in advance. But in case you do, here it is anyway. And other content creators were bound to make the same video, so they might as well get a jump on it because they want to get that audience too.
I was going to say, it sounds like, I mean, that'd be something that SourceFed puts out or something. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, it's not usually their style, but...
Right now, it's just above 31,000 views, so that's about on par with the Crash Course. So
there were a couple interesting moments in the Rogue One discussion. First off, Ken jumped in the middle of the review for Ellis, but then there was an interesting moment where Jeremy was talking and he asked Campea if he could plug his own channel's review. He literally asked him for permission, and John said it was fine. So I want to get your take on whether or not Jeremy has this kind of no plug order in regards to his videos, and whether when he's on Collider he has to be somewhat focused on the content they're creating and not overemphasize his channel. Yes, he plugs his channel at the very end of the show, but do you think they have some kind of guideline that he can't plug his content mid-show?
I have two
based on this moment.
I have 2 thoughts about this. One, I feel like they reference his YouTube channel plenty. Maybe not in that direct way, but I mean he'll mention that like his review will be up later when they talk about a movie, or they refer to his YouTube channel. Sometimes they ask Twitter questions that ask him I mean, I feel like it's referenced and alluded to plenty. No one has forgotten that he, has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. But at the same time, think about how little I feel like Mark and Kristian promote Schmoes. It's mainly just they plug
Schmoedown.
Exactly.
Jedi Council.
They'll talk Schmoedown and Kristian will plug Jedi Council, but they don't, to my knowledge, someone can correct me, that's fine, but I just don't feel like that they even really promote the live show. Maybe on Thursdays.
On Thursdays, yeah.
But I don't know. And of course, like someone like John Schnepp only really has something to promote at the end plug where everyone is given an opportunity to. So I don't think that Jeremy certainly doesn't get special treatment, but at the same time, I feel like he does get his stuff mentioned quite a bit.
Well, the question is, does Complex have a guideline that they have to follow in regards to Jeremy plugging other content? I don't know whether it's right or wrong. The question really isn't whether it's right or wrong. I'm just curious if they might have something like that in place as part of his contract. So that's something just to kind of look out for. How often Jeremy plugs his other content. Can he plug his other content freely as much as he wants? Is there some kind of language that limits it? That was just an interesting moment that came up that I thought you'd be interested in. Besides that, Campea had a great moment where he called Team Wangers Team Wankers. It was on accident, of course. So
brain fart Campea.
I love the brain fart from Campea.
Speaking of brain farts, do you want to get into Wednesday's opening of Movie Talk?
Sure.
The biggest brain fart possibly of Campea's entire career. I'm exaggerating. That's hyperbole. But it was so great to see that opening get botched because he's actually so good at being rehearsed and so good at throwing those things out there, the transitions of the segments of the show and the closing and the opening. It was just a great moment. And with the cherry on top was that they quoted Bill O'Reilly, the infamous Bill O'Reilly YouTube video. Yeah. I love that so much.
This entire show was wacky. They kept breaking for laughs, and there were just these awkward pauses similar to the one we had earlier. And it was there was a strange energy in this episode. Campea went off on his Gotham City Sirens rant.
Loved it.
He was really upset that Warner Brothers is again being reactionary. So Schnepp had a similar rant that went off about Robin Hood. He's tired of seeing Robin Hood stories. So just a really crazy story. In the best of the week episode that Perry does, this episode had probably 50% of the content for this week's bloopers. So check that episode out.
I loved it, and it was absolutely my favorite episode of Movie Talk the entire week.
We had a bunch of Emperor voice from Kristian and Schnepp. So do with that as you will. But yeah, it was just a fun episode. They didn't take themselves too seriously. I feel like Campea overall, I mean, there are certain moments like the Arrival budget issue, but overall, I feel like he's letting things go a bit more since he's returned to the show. Would you agree?
Do I agree that he's letting things go?
Like he's being a bit more flexible. Like he's not being as rigid or as tight with the show as he used to be.
Part of me,
he's letting these guys riff a bit when it sounded like at first that he wasn't going to let them have fun. He wanted to get rid of the shit rats and whatnot. I feel like he has been a bit more flexible than he used to be.
Part of me thinks that he's doing it because he's on camera. But off camera, he might secretly hate that some of that stuff happens, or he wishes that those moments could have been better, or I don't know. It's hard to gauge. He's a stickler about. It's like he's a stickler about certain things that other people do, but
it's fine if he does it.
He likes to joke. Exactly, he likes to joke around. I'm not saying he's not funny. That's certainly not. I think he's funny when he wants to be, absolutely. But
he has his moments when he is the dickhead boss. When he gives the dickhead boss humor, that's when he's best, I think.
Yeah. But I don't know. Part of me thinks that Campea gets irritated and wishes that shows could have been better if they're a little wonky, like you said this episode was. But I happen to love it, so I like the transparency of it.
Well, speaking of brain farts, on Thursday, Campea called Kong Bong, so that was a funny moment, of course. And Kristian had another great sweater on Thursday.
Believe it or not, I did not watch Thursday's Movie Talk. And what's even more ridiculous is I caught Fridays instead.
What?
Isn't that nuts?
Who is this?
That is so not Snelling. Like, that is not something I normally do. But I caught Friday's Movie Talk instead of Thursdays.
Is this Brian Smelling?
Oh, man. That was
your alter ego, Brian Smelling. Bizarro, Ryan Snelling.
That was awful, but I really hope my alter ego's name isn't Brian.
Well, what else would it be?
I don't know. Ryan with an I, like Ryan Johnson.
Rianne?
No, not Rianne. Okay.
Okay. Clark was on Friday Movie Talk, and once again, because of our criticism a couple weeks ago when we said we needed that fourth person to entice us into watching. Last week it was John. This week I feel like they went out of their way to have Clark sell us on watching Friday Movie Talk, and sure enough, we both watched Friday Movie Talk, so it worked.
Oh, you watched it too, so I'm not crazy.
Yes. I watched it. John Roca be damned, I still watched it.
This was an anomaly. Okay, speaking of John Roca, you probably have this in your notes. What did you think about Roca criticizing Perry for selling the Nicolas Cage movie? And he called her out because she watches so many shitty horror movies. She was so quick to correct him, saying that she sees plenty of bad movies. I just thought that was an interesting point.
First off, anyone who repeatedly says that Independence Day Resurgence is a good movie, except for the last 20 minutes, cannot criticize Perry Nemiroff's choice in movies.
Not only that, he defends Transformers.
Which ones? All of them?
I'm pretty sure all of them. And he's excited for the new one coming up.
Actually, I think he was a fan of the fourth one. I think he was the only person that kind of liked the fourth one.
Yeah.
So that's insane to me that he would do that to Perry. But there was a new wide shot on this episode that I don't think I've noticed before. They may have done it before. I've never noticed it. Did you notice this kind of eye-level desk shot that was a wide shot as well?
No, I did not.
So maybe it was just on accident, but it was definitely a new wide shot that I've never seen before. So check that out on Friday's Movie Talk.
I thought it was so funny because Dennis obviously was hosting the show on Friday. I feel like he had zero control. There were like 2 segments that went on for like 10 minutes, including that Arsenal thing with Nicolas Cage. I felt so bad for him. He had no control over the show for so much of it, and by minute 50, they were just getting to mailbag, but that's when I had to turn it off. So I don't even know if they made it to mailbag. I don't know if they made it to the Twitter questions, but I found that hilarious. Poor Dennis.
Well, for me, I like when the shows go off the rails. For me.
I just thought
for me
that was great. That's it for Movie Talk, I guess. Should we go back through the week and talk about all the genre shows?
Yeah, I want to talk Nightmares for a second. I'm not going to go in exact order, but Nightmares is one of the few genre shows that is going to be producing new shows every week for the rest of the year. So I think that is absolutely brilliant. For a show that really is going out of its way to grow its audience, I love the fact that they're going to be one of the few shows, not just on Collider, but on YouTube, that will be producing new content over the holidays. So I think that's brilliant short-term, long-term, and I can't wait to see how that translates into views in the long term. And since that time change that we've often talked about, here are their last 3 episode totals in terms of views, excluding that Thanksgiving episode. 35,000, 28,000, and 35,000. So they're averaging over 30,000 as their baseline, and that's kind of where we need to see them at. So I think the Thanksgiving episode was kind of just the exception to what they're doing now.
The outlier.
But yes, exactly. Perfect word. I love that Clark is really kind of upping her game. And not that she wasn't before, but she's really going out of her way to make this show as successful as possible.
I think one huge person that they have, literally and figuratively, is Schnepp. Because Schnepp is someone who still kind of goes on the road a little bit. He goes to certain cons and stuff. So I don't know if we talked about this before, but I think it's huge if Schnepp reps Nightmares just as much as he does Heroes when he goes out on the road. So I hope that that's happening. I'm not saying it's not. It was just something that I had thought of. And it was great to see Riley back as well, because wasn't he out on last week's Nightmares?
Yeah, the Wood Ranch chopped salad.
Yeah.
Finally, he's able to get a handle on that thing. I don't know what his deal is with that chopped salad, but maybe he should get the fajitas. Maybe he'd have better luck that way. I don't know.
Maybe you should go to Islands.
Yeah, Islands. Get the Maui burger. But I got to bring up the Josh Macuga show to you. Friend of the show, Josh Macuga. He's got his own show on YouTube, of course.
My best friend, Josh Macuga. Sure, go ahead.
Josh Macuga, friend of the show. Jeremy Johns, Collider's own Jeremy Johns. God, it feels good to say that. Jeremy Johns was on the show, and he was on with Haletta, formerly of Film HQ.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I would love to see Haletta on the Schmoeville universe or within the Schmoeville universe. She's absolutely great.
Does she happen to know anything about video games?
Unfortunately, no. She barely knows anything about movies. They joked within this episode that she barely sees movies. So that kind of dampened my spirits as far as her potentially joining. But she's really good as far as, a host, on-air personality type. But yeah, for the movie knowledge, unfortunately, she doesn't really have it. But I brought this up because Jeremy mentioned briefly that he lived in Beverly Hills before. So I wonder if he tried out living in LA, specifically Beverly Hills, for the purpose of another channel. But I did not know that he had actually tried out living here before. It clearly did not last that long, but it's interesting that he's now willing to give it a try again. So I don't know when that was. If anyone knows specifics about that, please let us know. Email us, comment. But specifically, on top of that, Josh asked him how Collider got him to come there. He brought up his dogs. He brought up money. Because Jeremy said, yeah, they pulled off the impossible. So he didn't really give us a specific reason, but the dogs continue to play a big part in Jeremy's decision-making. So I feel like last week when the dogs invaded the studio, I think he's got dog privileges, which was a big part as to why he ultimately committed.
Wait a minute. You're suggesting that part of his deal is that he could bring his dogs to work?
Yeah, I mean, you can't leave your dogs alone all day. I mean, Riley has to bring his dog in some days. So I feel like they let him have a carte blanche when it came to bringing his pets to work. That way they could get him to commit because he loves his dogs, clearly, Gypsy and Danger. So I think that the dogs were the key. And look, if you want to go straight for someone's heart, you aim for their pets. That is the key. Make the pets happy. You make the owner happy as well.
It's things like this that make people believe Collider is the greatest place on earth to work.
It's highly possible. Highly possible. So check out the Josh Macuga show. Trailer reactions. Last week I said I want them to mix up the pairings a bit. And sure enough, they did. Perry and Josh Macuga did one for Fast 8 or Fate of the Furious, whatever it's called. And I was going to have an aneurysm. I literally was going to have an aneurysm if Kristian did not do the Dunkirk trailer reaction. That morning I predicted that he would. Of course, he tried to deny it, but of course he ended up doing it anyway with Schnepp. So I'm glad in general that they heeded my advice, which was to mix up the pairings for trailer reactions.
Brian Davids, as you know, I don't typically watch the trailer reactions, but I do catch the pairings in the thumbnails. And I agree. I'm glad that they are switching it up as well, even though I wish that Ken had his own entire own show on the network. Trailer reactions wouldn't quite work under that, but
yeah, Ken and Wata should be reacting to every trailer that drops.
I don't know
together,
that,
of course.
But I don't know about that. I want to ask you, how did you feel about Roxy Strier's appearance on TV Talk?
Now, everybody knows how precious I am when it comes to my SPR experience, or the SPR experience. I shouldn't say my. But if there's anyone that I do not mind taking the place of the SPR experience, it is the Roxy Strier experience, aka the Roxy Star experience. So I was a big fan of this episode. I thought she did a great job. I like that she brought some different opinions than usual, and I felt like there were some moments where she was a bit more aggressive than she normally would be because she knew that she was filling the shoes of Miss Sasha Pearl Ravers. So some people even commented on the fact during the episode that she sounded like Sasha for a minute. So I thought she did a great job in Sasha's absence. What did you think?
I actually kind of thought the opposite. I really like Roxy, but I wish she actually shined more. I don't know. I felt like the other guys kind of talked more than her. And I really...
Is this Brian smelling again?
I don't know. I love Roxy. I thought she did a great job. I wish I got more out of her during this episode. Maybe that's the unfortunate side of filling Sasha's chair, but that's how I took it.
Look, again, there's only one, the SPR experience, but if you have to have a substitute teacher, the Roxy Schreier experience is the only way to go that we've seen so far, at least.
Sure. Yeah, we both love Sasha. We both love Roxy, so I have no complaints at all.
I had a recent concern about these solo movie reviews that we hadn't had one in about 3 weeks. You know how they do them in front of the green screen with about 1 to 2 people?
Sure.
We hadn't had them in 3 weeks, and we finally got some group reviews this week for Rogue One, but finally we got the return of the solo reviews. And basically John is now doing them solo in his office. How long these will stick, I don't know, but I'm just glad that they are doing them again, because it seemed like they were about to cut them, because maybe they are not worth the time and resources to produce. I don't know. But I like that they're back again, and it looks like John just redesigned his office, because he's shooting a bunch of stuff in there now with his Canadian flags everywhere and his leather couches. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just redid his office.
I was actually kind of surprised that was the format of the Rogue One trailer video. Not the trailer reaction, but the 5 things from the trailer and the movie. I was surprised that it was just him at his desk. Because from the thumbnail, it looked like it would be a sort of a... reminded me of what Screen Rant does, and sort of like what Watch Mojo does with their list, where it's just sort of the video is playing with narration, but it was him at his desk. He showed just images, and he was very quick. I don't know, that just kind of surprised me. It didn't look like a typical video that I thought would be like that. I mean, that's fine, but it was just worth noting, I thought. So...
Well, that's it for me as far as Collider content is concerned. Obviously, we still have the Schmoedown to come. So
yeah, I don't have much else to say about Jedi Council. I avoided, and Heroes was great as usual. So yeah, let's move on to our Schmoedown recap portion, or as I like to call it, the Feeling Old segment. Let's get to the team match that took place on Tuesday. We had Team Trek versus Team 6 Degrees. Brian Davids, what did you think of this match?
Well, first off, they shot this on Friday right before they went to the Rogue One premiere, because you could tell that Mark's hair had just been cut. You could tell that Kristian had his tan, so they definitely shot this the day before Rogue One. And Mark again referenced the throat of Mr. Kristian Harloff, but he did not go with the golden throat reference. So I wonder if our golden throat talk scared off Ellis. Maybe he heard about it and now he went with something else. So stay tuned for that. But
it might not even have anything to do with us. Like Kristian.
Oh no! Everything that happens has to do with us.
No, I'm just imagining like a legitimate talk between Kristian and Mark, being like, "They're on to us,
bro." You got to stop saying my throat is gold, and it's making the viewers uncomfortable.
No, I was going to say they're on to us. They're catching on to our relationship.
True. I hear you. Well, 6 Degrees came out in their introduction. They were wearing Wanger shirts, and they had hashtag musicals written on the back, obviously mocking the previous match between them, as musicals ultimately cost the Wangers the match. I thought this was really clever. I like that they put this amount of work into it. I wonder if Cobster sent them a bunch of sternly worded 3-word messages over the fact that they took a shot at their team. Who knows? But I like Team 6 Degrees. I think they're awfully fun.
Sure.
And Team Trek obviously handled them, but it was a fun match to watch. I like when, even if the outcome is lopsided, I still like when it's entertaining, and I love having these two in the league, of course, Miss Movies and Stacey Howard.
Yeah, I thought that this match was pretty fun. right out of the gate, again, those entrances were fun. Inman.
It took 9 minutes for the show to get started.
It did.
Did you notice that?
Yeah, that's too long. And the other Friday Schmoedown was also like that, but we'll get to it. Inman's line, "We fucking love musicals." Love that line. That was great.
They handed out flowers to 6 Degrees.
They did.
Forgot to mention.
Is Scott Mance the Schmoedown sweetheart? That was quoted in the episode that Scott Mance was the Schmoedown sweetheart, and I wanted your take. Did you have anyone else in mind that could hold that title?
Well, if Rocha is the heel, if he's the face of the heels right now, I hope another person comes along to replace that face of the heels. Then Scott Mance is the face of the faces, or the baby faces, the good guys, the heroes of the contest. So yeah, I would definitely say that Mance is the face of the heroes, or the face of the face of the baby faces in this league. So I hope that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, I don't know that it does. You said face a lot.
Well, the opposite of a heel is a face, otherwise known as
you.
baby face and heroes. So, yeah, I would say that Paul Stantz is, in fact, the face of the heroes. By the way, separate tangent altogether. Did you notice how much promotion Mance has been doing for Rogue One?
No.
He has been he's been posting like crazy in the Schmoeville Facebook group about Rogue One, telling people to see it, asking people to say what they thought about it. He is going off on this movie. And is there a vested interest in him doing this, or is he just really excited about the movie? I don't know.
The more rhetoric he has out there about Rogue One, the greater his chances are at appearing on the Blu-ray.
Exactly. He wants those quotes. He wants those Blu-ray quotes.
God love him. I love going to Walmart and going through the Blu-ray bin and seeing Scott Mance on the front cover of a Blu-ray.
I did not know that you actually did this, but now I kind of want to do this at my local Costco.
I mean, I don't do that for the sole purpose, but when I do see his name,
I bet you do.
When I do see it, it's a real treat. I mean, sometimes it's on a movie like Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit, but you gotta love Scott's enthusiasm for the movies.
The Facebook group has been really good about posting any Blu-rays they find with his name. Like sometimes they'll find a really obscure movie from years ago that he'll have a quote on. So yeah. That's another benefit to the Facebook group.
What did you think of the wheel category mixed bag? How do you feel about that?
It's interesting. I am surprised that 6 Degrees picked it. I realize why, but my God, did it backfire? I mean, this is how Trek blew this match wide open. I mean, they got down 13-4 because of what they chose, mixed bag, and really Trek never looked back. I mean, 6 Degrees tried to make a run at it, but ultimately they only got up to 9-17 at the end of round 2, and it was a TKO from there, 17-10 Trek. But I think the idea is there. It did not work out this time. I don't know if it's the best way to punish your opponent in the end. I still feel like there has to be a worse category than mixed bag to punish your opponent when you get opponent's choice. I don't know.
Not only that, though, when it was 6 Degrees' turn at the wheel, Team Trek got 3 steals.
Yeah.
So, I mean, altogether, you're right. That was an incredible round for Team Trek, and it eventually led to 6 Degrees' demise in round 3. They won, or Team Trek won by TKO 17-10, and Team Trek is now 2-0, and they face ETC next in the Spectacular, correct?
Yeah, Mantzman wants his revenge against ETC for mocking his kidney, for mocking the cab advertising that he does, or that Access Hollywood does with his likeness. And it's interesting. Inman said something quite funny. He said, "We're not going to let a team that's made of letters get a shot at the title belt." So just the way that he said that really made me laugh. And so I think Inman, I wasn't really taken with Inman for a long time, but lately I feel like he's opening up and getting a bit more fun as far as his on-camera Schmoedown persona. One of the big questions that Macuga asked was why mixed bag when he went to interview 6 Degrees, and that was obviously the big mistake there. But interestingly enough, they challenged Wolves of Steel to a match, but I don't think they're capable of playing them. I think they're going to get Real Rejects next, and that's going to be quite an interesting matchup given the personalities of Real Rejects, and that's going to be a fun match. That's all I know. It might be a low scoring match, but I think it's going to be a very entertaining match nonetheless. So I don't know, man. So I noted in my notes though that I bet the Kristian Magic Hat match shot on this very same day, and sure enough, it was. So because that's a perfect segue to Harloff Macuga, right?
Because of the consistency of Harloff's tan, correct?
Exactly.
You talked about Inman being funny on his match. Oh, I thought Macuga was really funny on this match.
Friend of the show, Josh Macuga.
My best friend, Josh Macuga. I'm not just saying it because I'm on this Magic Hat high right now. He was genuinely funny. He was being really funny on the match. But, there at the same time, there was, a movie trivia match going on that we should talk about. So how did you feel about that?
Well, it was a great match, first off. I mean, the smack talk alone to start the match was at its highest. This was the ideal Smack Talk segment because you had so much history that they were able to show us in that opening segment. It actually made it worth watching. I know some people skip ahead. I try to watch everything now. I admit I used to skip ahead, but now I really want to go over the history, and I felt this had some great Smack Talk history, got people caught up to speed. Kristian went over the fact that he wants revenge against Riley, Roca, Signor, and Macuga. Obviously, he got his revenge against Macuga. Now, what made this episode funny to me up top was the fact that Kristian was dressed as Dexter from the TV show. And this is when you know Kristian is behind on his TV since he still treats Dexter as a good television show enough to dress up like him.
I said the exact same thing. To the people that I was watching the Schmoedown with, we were all laughing. I also thought it was funny because Kristian hates TV. And the fact that he referenced the TV show, I found that to be fascinating in his intro. It was also the most, I dug it. I liked the reference. I liked him laying down the mat. But the music was so, out of place for the Schmoedown. I guess it wasn't as big of a deal in the intro, but it was so funny when the match ended on that high note, and then you hear just these quiet strings playing in the background. It was so funny.
Right.
But I appreciate
it. Kristian's DVR is still set to 2002. He's so behind on TV that he's still got 2002 to get caught up on. But as someone who watched the Blue Fairy Broderick match live when it happened, it's just cool to me to see how all this stuff has come full circle. Magic Hat accidentally referenced Michael Keaton in Frequency. Obviously, he meant White Noise, so that was a mistake that he made before the match. Part of me said, is that an omen for what's to come? And it kind of was, because Kristian, even though it was a good match, Kristian, I think, had this one pretty handily. I mean, it was close going into round 3, but I still felt like Kristian had a handle on it. Josh wasn't getting his usual luck. And as I've said before, people give our good friend Josh Macuga way too much credit for his guesses because the way he answers almost every question is like a guess. So they automatically think he's guessing even when he's not. So there was a moment in round 2 when Josh actually answered questions confidently and with authority, and then Mark Ellis had this commentary as if to say, man, there's a lot of guessing in round 2 so far, and it's paying off, and yet there wasn't any guessing to that point in Macuga's turn. So Mark was so used to Macuga guessing that even when there wasn't guessing taking place, he assumed there was. So go back and watch that round 2 moment, because that was some of the first answers that I've ever heard Josh give where it wasn't him asking a question as his answer. It was Michael Douglas. It was Costa Rica. It was all very confident answers. Coney Island. So just a weird observation.
Well, that's a great point, actually, because that does not follow him into round 3. Maybe his confidence followed him. He was so confident in his answer. Michael Jordan in Space Jam. Oh my God.
Yeah.
As a child of the 90s, Josh Macuga, not him, me, I was outraged at how he thought he had it. He thought that was the answer. He just threw it out there so confidently. Oh, Michael Jordan, right? No, not Michael Jordan. Damn it. He's the one person you don't guess. Oh my God. I'm not saying that would have saved the match for him if he got that right. I mean, it wouldn't. But what a horrible note to end on with that stupid Michael Jordan guess. I didn't read the comment section, but I hope they went nuts over that.
Michael Jordan was at the peak of his power. There's no way he's going to be in a movie that renders him talentless for much of the movie. The whole point was for him to be this kind of superhero type. So, bad guess. But I got to admit, I was kind of worried when it came to Kristian because he had a very rough second turn in round 1 where he couldn't buy an answer. There's something about Mary resides in Seattle.
Yeah.
I thought that was a horrible guess. When you just picture that movie, you see the sunshine in your head, and automatically that can't be Seattle if you just picture any frame from that movie. And then there was a quote that was difficult from 2001. I forgive him for that. But Todd and Margot from Christmas Vacation, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, I mean, my
Absolutely.
God, that is an easy question. But again, round two continues to be the difference maker. But in this case, like we just talked about, round 3, the luck did not follow Josh. He did not have multiple choice to pull those educated guesses from. And so he had to pull these guesses from the back of his head, and he just couldn't do it. So I'm glad Kristian won 12-10 TKO. I'm really glad he won because now he can calm down from that retirement talk.
Oh, God.
I hated the idea of this competition without him. So thank God for Josh Macuga, friend of the show, really kind of taking the grenade on this one.
I am very much looking forward to him staying in the league. I hope that he faces Signor again. And who was the other person that he called out after that? Was it Signor and then Roca?
Riley.
And Riley. I thought it was Roca.
And Roca and Riley.
Okay.
He called out those 3 others. Because Riley he blames for the Broderick mistake or issue from this match with Josh. So he wants everybody.
Is that it for the Schmoedown? Is that it for the Feeling Old segment?
Well, we got to do some post-interview stuff because Emma referenced Macuga as someone who's dressed like they could get married in Vegas. So this was said 2 days before he proposed. This was said the day before he did our interview on this show. So do you think she knew his plan to propose? Did everybody know his plan? Because David Griffin did not know his plan, even though he had plans to hang out with Griffin that Sunday where he proposed. So could this be just a coincidence on Emma's part? Because he didn't really respond to that statement. So maybe he was trying to keep it quiet. I don't know. But it was very interesting it was a very interesting thing to hear, knowing what was coming as far as his proposal.
Would Macuga tell Riley, Kristian, Ken, Ellis? Absolutely. Emma? No.
Yeah, so it's a coincidence then. But yeah, strange thing to say considering what was to come. So
Sure.
Macuga challenged Finstock, though. Finstock's retired, obviously. So I don't know what the deal is there. I doubt he's going to get him to come out of retirement, but who knows? Who knows with the Schmoedown? Anything is possible, as we've learned.
I have really no interest in that match at all. So I'm totally fine if that does not go through.
Same here.
I did want to mention one of the reasons why Macuga was so funny was him screaming at Roca in the middle of the match. I thought that was great.
I was a bit disappointed they didn't use the audience cam this time around, but for whatever reason, maybe they had a good reason why. But Last point. Did the thumbnail drive you nuts for this match?
Oh, because the lighting looks different on each picture?
Yeah, Macuga had kind of a dark lighting for his picture, as do most of the recent competitors. Yet Kristian had probably a newer photo, and his lighting was completely different. So, I don't know. There's just something weird about the way it looks. Maybe it was them trying to offset the great tan that Kristian had for that match. I don't know.
If we're nitpicking the Schmoedown, that particular match, it bugged me that the music was so low because it felt like the most empty sounding Schmoedown to date.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the music was very low. I had a hard time hearing it. So,
let me ask you something.
Please do.
This is not a foolproof theory, but I was talking about this with Clint Lagenet, who's been getting a lot of attention for his memes in the Facebook group lately. I suggested that he get involved in that, so you're welcome, world. But he and I have been talking about a hat theory in regards to Collider content. He and I both feel that everybody is going out of their way to wear less hats on Collider shows.
God.
Kristian used to wear hats almost every day. Mark used to wear hats almost every day. He still does here and there, but do you think there has been kind of perhaps a memo from the top to say, try not to wear hats as often? Have you noticed this at all?
You tell me. What is Fernandez's stance on hats?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. So people,
I thought you
keep
knew.
an eye out. That's the question I'm asking here. This is not a foolproof theory, like I said. I don't have a stance on it quite yet, but it is something that a couple people, including myself, have noticed. So I want to see how this plays out. Do you think they're going out of their way to not wear hats as often? Is there a dress code, perhaps? Time will tell. But I just want to bring that up real quick because Clint and I had kind of a longer conversation than you'd think on such a ridiculous subject.
Well, so Kristian's giant sweater it makes it possible that there is some kind of dress code because I've never seen him wear anything like that before. But at the same time, you cut to Ellis, and he's probably wearing basketball shorts and flip-flops, so who knows? Maybe it doesn't matter because it's behind the desk, but, you know.
So that is the captivating hat theory for this week.
Brian Davids, do we have a mispronunciation of the week today?
We've got a double pack. I was going to do a review of all our mispronunciations of the year so far, but then I heard Mark Ellis doing a Schmoes Moonlight review. Thus, we're getting a supporting actor in Moonlight, a guy who's won numerous awards already for his outstanding performance. He's had quite a year already with House of Cards and Luke Cage, and that's Mahershala Ali. Mahershala Ali. Mahershala Ali. Mahershala Ali. Say it for me, Snelling.
Mahershala. Mahershala Ali.
I'll take it. Mahershala Ali, fantastic actor, fantastic year. And our second mispronunciation of the week comes courtesy of John Schnepp. He called Cillian Murphy Cillian Murphy. Of course, Cillian is in the upcoming Dunkirk. He's the star of one of my favorite shows on TV, that's Peaky Blinders. Of course, we all know him from the Dark Knight trilogy. So remember, it's Cillian Murphy, terrific actor.
You know, John Schnepp also had his own mispronunciation of the week when he corrected himself by pronouncing Thor's hammer, which I will not do here.
I don't think I know the name of Thor's hammer.
Too bad. You won't hear it from me. Okay. Because I will destroy it.
It's some complicated thing, I take it?
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. It's terrible. You need to look up the spelling of it. The first two letters are M and J. So there's that. Let's get into the Schmoes Know Show, number 263. Last show of the year, in all caps. We had Kristian and Ellis, Macuga and Ken, as Kristian called it, the OG crew, on this taped episode of the show, and we knew that we were getting it like I said, this is the last show of the year, Brian. So not only did we have this episode to think about, but just all of Phase 6 in general. But what are your thoughts on what we saw on Thursday?
Well, I was interested in the fact that the last 3 shows, Kristian Harloff has been on for a grand total of 29 minutes. The last 3 shows.
Really?
He wasn't on the last 2, obviously, and then he left halfway through this, or more than halfway through this, at the 29-minute mark. So, Kristian Harloff, whenever a Star Wars movie comes out, I'm going to expect his appearances to be few and far between because that man is in demand whenever a Star Wars movie opens up, it seems.
What the hell's going on with you, Kristian? Come on. We missed you. And God bless Nick Mundy for trying to keep you there when you were trying to get out early by blocking you in. But that didn't seem to work because he just got a note or a ticket or whatever the hell that was. But
they taped this on Tuesday, from what I could gather, because I think Ken referenced the first time he saw Rogue One, as in yesterday. He saw it on Monday, I believe, for the first time. And I wonder why Nick Mundy was there. Do you think he was taping his match with Brett, which is supposed to be in early 2017, or was it just to be a guest on the show to promote his charity that he was pitching?
Well, I thought our theory was that they, or it's proven that they tape Schmoedowns on Fridays. So I'm wondering if Tuesday would have been the day for that.
Well, first off, it's way too soon to tape matches that are going to air in 2017. So I think he was there to get the message out about the charitable effort that he was passionate about. I think that was the main purpose, not for Schmoedown. Come on. I mean, look, if Kristian had to leave early, then how could they tape a Schmoedown that day anyway? It didn't make a lot of sense. So just disregard the Schmoedown theory.
That's fine. I would have disregarded it anyway, Brian.
Fine, whatever.
You know I love it. We're jumping all around. That's fine. I appreciate it. I loved Nick talking about that. We've talked about it on a previous episode. I believe the live show after Election Day. I was one of the only voices out there that was kind of had a desire for some sort of political discussion. I, was in the small minority, but I really, really appreciated that Nick took the time to discuss it. Well, that everyone took the time to discuss it on the live show, because I'm hoping that there was a good reaction to it from the Schmoeville community. It certainly inspired me, and I am actually going to make a donation later this weekend to whitehelmets.org. But I was wondering how you felt about that.
I gotta be honest with you, I had to mute much of this portion of the conversation because I was so paranoid about Rogue One theories, spoilers, so I didn't really hear the gist of the charity. I know the broad strokes, but I literally did not hear the specifics about it, so please forgive me.
I wasn't going to beat you over the head and make you donate to this charity, but I mean, it's, the broad strokes. There's no reason that we have to get into it, but I hope that everyone has taken some time to look into it. But anyway, I overall though, I appreciated that the Schmoes Know Show was able to be the channel for a great cause like that. So,
did you object to the fact that they had a bunch of ads still, despite being a 53-minute show? I mean, they got to make a living. I'm not criticizing that, but were you surprised that they did a bunch of ads still, considering it was a very, very short pre-tape show?
Nah, not really. I only recall them doing 2. I'm not saying they only did 2, but it feels like off the top of my head they only did 2, and I don't really think that that's a big deal. When usually they do like 8 in the first hour when you consider Copster's breaks, so I didn't think anything of it.
I can't believe I buried the lead. I've got an exclusive in regards to the Schmoes Know Show.
Uh-oh. Let's hear it, Brian.
So this came from a reputable source, but not my usual source.
Reputable?
So, in other words, it's not Kristian Harloff who fed me this information. I have it on good authority that we have a new female co-host joining the rotation in 2017. I won't say who, but it's rather interesting. I'll leave it at that. So we're going to have a new female co-host to go into the mix right now that has Emma and Sasha, sometimes Tiffany. So this is very exciting news, and I think it's going to get a lot of people excited when it happens.
Hey, do you remember when that was supposed to be Perry Nemiroff?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Zing! How many people were promised as regulars on the Schmoes Know Show this year that ended up not being regulars at all?
Well, this sounds like it's got some weight to it, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, fair enough. That does make me excited, though, despite the Perry dig. Or is it? It's really a dig at Kristian or whoever makes those promises, but...
Well, we talked about how I try to avoid any Rogue One expectations, and
we did?
Ken said in the beginning that coming out of the film that he felt it was the best Star Wars movie ever. They kept talking about that. He had since come down from that opinion, but that's the kind of stuff that I was trying to avoid, was the fact that people are building these expectations. I did not want to have those expectations in my head, because then I might be disappointed. So I caught this line, of course, and that is why later in the episode I was so quick to mute portions that got to Rogue One. So looking back through my notes right now, I now understand why I had to mute part of the Monday conversation.
When did you see Rogue One for the first time?
Friday morning.
I was gonna say, why didn't you watch this? Was there any particular reason you didn't watch the show? Just hold off on it until after you saw Rogue One?
I watched the show Thursday afternoon when it dropped. I watched the movie Friday morning, so I knew I was going to see it Friday morning. I didn't want to. I didn't want to have any.
I said, was there a reason that you just didn't hold off on watching the show until after you saw Rogue One? Is what I asked.
Well, no, I didn't expect them to talk about Rogue One again this week, but no, I wanted it dropped early. I wanted to get the content watched and done out of the way. I knew I was going to be watching a lot of movies this weekend, so I wanted to get our homework done for the week, Snelling.
I procrastinate on my homework, Brian. By the way, reputable? How do you pronounce that word?
Reputable.
Reputable.
Fuck.
Yes. Best moment.
No. Cut.
What a great moment. That was awesome.
Did I just say reputable? Damn it.
All right, let's talk about... We've been having fun with Macuga on the show. Let's talk about Macuga's actual reaction to being on the show. I just had a huge smile on my face listening to him talk about how much he enjoyed coming on. I'm still on this Macuga high. Did you have fun with that? Did you enjoy it?
I did. I mean, we've come a long way to be able to say that Josh Macuga is now a friend of the show. But then it shifted to Ken.
I was gonna.
But then it shifted to Ken.
I was gonna stop at Copster first.
Oh yeah, stop at Copster first.
It was the smallest moment. But they happened to mention that not only has Macuga taken shots at us, but Copster takes shots of us as well. And probably the biggest laugh of the show came from Copster going, "Yeah, it's shtick," into the mic.
The biggest laugh of the show. I didn't hear anyone laugh.
No, for me, I laughed my ass off.
For me?
Yeah. I laughed my ass off when I heard Copster do that.
Well, clearly you did not listen to the Josh Macuga interview, because he said during the interview that Copster does not like us multiple times.
Right.
So this should not be a surprise.
Oh, I'm not saying I was surprised. I just laughed at the joke.
And obviously it's a joke, because shtick is on air. Shtick is a performance. Talking crap about us in the back office is certainly not shtick when no one's listening.
So it's safe to say that Copster is not your informant on that female co-host thing.
Definitely not. Copster would only give me 3 words in response to something like that, or if it was a scoop that he was giving me, it would only be 3 words. So.
And would the 3 words be F off Brian?
Some variation of that.
Sure. Okay, I'm sorry. Get to Ken Knapsack. What were you going to say?
Well, let's see here. Ken apparently needs convincing to come on our show now. All because he was wrong about a certain pronunciation of a certain Israeli actress's last name that he still won't admit he's wrong on, even though he basically did admit he was wrong by saying that his American accent prevents him from saying the last name Godot. However, as I proved at the top of the show, we have our own word in English, which is dote, which means to fawn over something, to express praise for something. We have that word that we're able to say. It's our own word. So the fact that he continues to stubbornly deny this pronunciation and then punish us by not being on our show is just beyond me, especially when he is telling people in this very episode to call him Ken, not Kenny, and yet he refuses to call Gal Gadot what she prefers to be called, what she has told the Israeli and American media to call her, what she has explained to us through various appearances to call her. So it's kind of shocking to me that we're being punished, and yet he is insisting that people call him one thing when he won't do it for Gal Gadot. So there you go.
Okay, you have a point there. But what I want to ask you, I love Ken Knapsack. I love him. Arguably my favorite personality on everything we talk about.
Keep in mind, I had a dialogue open with him already. He agreed to do the show. We were planning out when he was going to do it. And then the Godot stuff happened where he challenged me inexplicably out of nowhere while relying on fuzzy information that he was recalling from memory from 3 years prior. And yet, despite being proven wrong, he is still making us suffer for his oversight.
You sold me on this. You sold us all on it. My question is, what's more important? Having Ken on the show or you being right about how to pronounce this name?
Well, I am right. There's no issue about it. But we accommodated his request to be called Ken. People will notice the last few episodes we have strictly said Ken only. So we have given him what he wants, and yet we're still being punished when everybody knows that Gal Gadot's last name is not Gadot, it is Godot. And Kristian has been trying to get him to say it as well, and yet he stubbornly refuses. So we're not the ones being stubborn anymore. Ken is the one being stubborn. And it's silly that he is denying himself a great interview that I already did preparation for, as well as denying our audience a chance to learn more about him.
What about Chris Harloff?
Ken is the pride of Pismo. People need to know more about the pride of Pismo. They already learned about Joshi Macuga. They already know about Chris Harloff. They need to learn about the pride of Pismo.
By the way, Joshi Macuga, from here on out, I'm calling him Joshi. I think
we just became good friends with the guy. Let's not get back on Cobster terms with the guy.
I think we've earned it. We've earned it. We're like, me and you are on the same level as Macuga's parents in terms of relations. I mean, am I reading that wrong or?
I mean, I know we inspired his engagement, but I'm not going to risk it any further by calling him Joshi. I just can't.
This is something that I want you to speak on, because this is something that I sort of opened with, but they brought it up in the show. You are more of a historian with this content than I am. It's cool for me to see how far these guys have come, but it's got to be cool for you too, right? I mean, when you think about how they made that video, and this isn't even in the beginning of Schmoes. It was like 3 years ago in 2012, or 4 years ago, excuse me, in 2012, when Lucasfilm announced that they had been bought by Disney, or when Disney announced that they bought Lucasfilm. Those two guys just geeking out at home, talking about how excited they were for the movies. You fast forward to this point, these guys just attended their second Star Wars premiere. And when you think about that achievement and every other achievement that they've had, I am so far removed from them and I am not as experienced as a fan as other people, but it's just so much fun to think about and very, very inspiring. And I feel very lucky to have this sort of indirect relationship with these guys. How do you feel about all of that?
Well, I still remember the episode of Toad Hop where they were talking about the Lucasfilm announcement. So they weren't quite doing this from home. I know Ken told that story, but they were on the air at Toad Hop at the time, and so they did talk about it in that capacity. But yeah, it is crazy to think about how far things have come since then. And it's kind of an example that everybody can learn from, that, look, in 3 or 4 years, you never know what hard work can lead to, especially through YouTube. If you make great content and you believe in it, you never know that, you know, something like this couldn't happen to you either. So I think it's a great example for all of us.
I'm talking about when they were in separate cars and they had just heard the news. Kristian told Ellis that he needed to come over immediately to record a video. And it was...
I realized the moment that it was announced, but they were still doing shows on the air at Toad Hop at that time. And so I still remember the actual episode of the live show.
Oh, okay. I wasn't saying that they weren't doing it.
I know you meant the momentary news, but...
Okay. But anyway, is that all you wanted to say about it?
Well, look, you put me on the spot here. I mean, I don't have this big, long diatribe prepared about how I feel about them coming this far. But
I'll talk from the heart.
It's a great thing to see. It's a great example to follow that, you know, who knows? Maybe this after show will lead us to a premiere at a Qdoba someday, or a grand opening of a Qdoba someday. I don't know. But Ken, though, finally addressed his name on the air. We had talked about how he waited a long time to do this. He says that he addressed this before, but it wasn't on the Facebook page, and it wasn't on the air to my knowledge. I've been watching for 4 years now, so I don't remember him ever addressing this to the fans, to Schmoeville. So when he says he's addressed it, who was he addressing it to? But at least he finally got it out there now on video, on the record, that he wants to be called XYZ. He wants to be called Ken. And that led to some funny moments between everybody telling their pet names or you know, what their parents call them and whatnot. But it does show you that one little thing can take on a life of its own. Just one little thing, and not just the shows itself. One little word, one little name can become this whole big deal. And it was interesting when he talked about Matt Key, because for so many years I was used to him saying my writing partner Matt Key, and now it's his former writing partner. So it was such a shock to my system to hear him describe Matt Key as his former writing partner, because he would always say my writing partner Matt Key every time he would bring him up. So I'm glad that he finally got this out there. I'm glad that it's hopefully put to bed. And again, we are following what he wants. We've been very good about that, I think. So very strange episode, though. We jumped around a variety of different places in the short 53-minute runtime.
Oh, definitely. And what's funny is Kristian, before he left, he mentioned that they were going to speak on the Schmoedown Spectacular, and they didn't do that at all after he had left. Like, they briefly talked about it at the top, but he thought that they were going to go to it, and they did not. They talked more about Kristian and Josh's match, which obviously was already recorded, so the smack talk wasn't as natural as it was for the match that we saw previously on the live show, where it was, I guess, was it the Wangers and Mega Powers, where we got authentic smack between the two? And you could tell that it was authentic smack. RB3 was dropping the hammer down. So you really get a sense of how different the smack talk is in moments like this. So it just makes me wish that we could have every show lined up to be recorded the next day after a live show, so that we get those more authentic moments. Just personal preference. Yeah, but that's never going to happen, though.
I know it's not practical, but someday, I know they've got the gear to do it. The TriCaster allows them to do live broadcasts. So someday, they have the gear to do it, to be able to broadcast live. I'm not expecting it anytime soon, but someday it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
It would have to be a flawless production.
Tricky. I mean, if there's an issue with a question, that's when it gets scary, because then you have to stop the match, maybe redo the question. That's when it's like, man, I see why they always want to tape them, because of something incidental like that or inconsequential that just slows down the show and it really sets everything back. So I understand why they want that umbrella or safety blanket.
I'm running out of notes here, but I did want to say that I love the idea of Ken Napzok officiating weddings.
It's so perfect. Like, you can absolutely picture him doing it. Absolutely.
And I wonder how much he charges. I mean, I'm seriously...
Do we have to convince him? Do we have to convince him to do our weddings as well?
Probably.
He needs some
after the
convincing.
mess you put us in.
What did I do? He challenged my pronunciation, which was the right pronunciation. It's not my fault. He took on a subject that he was not prepared to take on.
It's so easy to get you going on that subject.
It's very easy to get me going, especially when you know you're right. So he's admitted he's wrong. I mean, he hasn't said those words, but he's basically admitted he's wrong, because now he's saying his American accent won't let him. But the Rogue One premiere talk, I was interested in a couple things, because Macuga complimented Mark Ellis' tux and how it fit much better than last year's. Ellis' tux last year did not fit him. It looked awful from a fit perspective.
Correct.
It was cool looking,
correct,
but it just didn't fit him. So this one, he looked much snazzier. I really want to compliment him on that. And he talked about that moment where he heard Van Halen at the Star Wars premiere party. And he went on Instagram or something and said, "This is the greatest night of my life." So when you talk about those moments that you can't believe, I'm sure that's one of Ellis's, where he can't believe that he just heard Van Halen at the premiere party for Rogue One. So that was probably his full circle moment that we were just talking about.
And unfortunately, that video, I must have skimmed past it, because I didn't know that it existed until the show. I must have flipped right past that on Instagram, but it is on Instagram for those of you who did not know.
They had the crappiest limo from those pictures, and then they went on to talk about how it was the crappiest 1994 white limo, and that they were potentially having problems because it was too heavy. There were too many people to potentially get to the premiere. So I found that story hilarious, because that was the first thing that came to my head. Like, why are they having this super old Lincoln limousine taking them there? I mean, could they not find a better option? That just surprised me, but all in all, it made for a great story, and I love the fact that people were yelling baby carrots at the premiere to Ellis. That's crazy to me.
I love the idea of them arriving at that premiere in an Uber. Like, if that was one of their last resorts.
Right. I mean, don't they have an Uber for limos at this point? There's got to be, right?
I don't know.
There's got to be an Uber for limos.
I have no need for a limousine. Ever. Ever again after prom. So. By
the way, just to go back to that Ken addressing his name issue, I love how he did. I love how he brought up how Campia and Ashley were calling him that.
Yeah.
Without realizing what he wanted to be called. That was something that you and I discussed a great deal. And some people assume, oh, no, they're coworkers. They're allowed to call him that. No, this was not something that he wanted his coworkers to call him. That's why his former employer was always very firm about calling him Ken. So I like that he addressed this. Hopefully we never have to bring this up in 2017. Hopefully we can put this all to bed. I just didn't care for his choice of words, that he has to be convinced to be on the show when he already agreed to do it. We did preparation, yada, yada. But the advice that was offered for Macuga, Mundy saying, giving him the bad boys vow advice to ingrain it into a ring. It's not going to happen. Made me laugh nonetheless. But this was the biggest moment that I have earmarked right here, and that's kind of the last thing I've got to say. Macuga told the story how he went to the Point Break premiere with Finstock So that is further evidence that Finstock had some sort of mysterious financial investment in this Point Break remake. Once again, folks, Finstock was on the Schmoes Know Show a couple years ago before Point Break came out, and he said to the audience, don't be surprised if this movie is good, if this movie surprises you. Because as we found out later, he was an investor of some kind. And it led him to talking smack about the producers of that film because they are now producing the Blade Runner sequel that Denis Villeneuve is directing with Ridley Scott producing. So I love that he brought that moment up. And Mundy cracked this joke as he's telling this story. Which Ralph's was the Point Break premiere held at? Got a huge laugh from everybody there. Got a huge laugh from me.
I don't understand.
That was my biggest laugh of the episode.
I don't understand that reference.
Which Ralph's? Ralph's is a grocery store. So which crappy venue, which crappy grocery store was the Point Break remake premiere held at? So that joke got me. Ralph's is a very specific chain. I believe that's just California only.
Yeah, we have Kroger out here in Kentucky, so
that's real catchy, Snelling.
If he had said which Kroger was that at, I would have understood.
Is it reputable?
It is reputable. It is a reputable grocery chain. Absolutely. 100%.
I cannot believe I said that.
And I'm going to love it. I'm going to love giving you shit from here on out about that.
Great.
Okay. Actually, I have one more thing I have to ask you before we sign off. Kristian George happened to tweet out a question to all of Schmoeville, and we have to talk about it. There's a poll up. I don't know if it's still up now. I don't know if it's ended by now. It definitely will have ended by the time this podcast comes out. Brian Davids, what are your thoughts? The Schmoes Know live show potentially being on Wednesday nights.
Well, I feel like I am responsible for this change. I have been lamenting throughout most of Phase 6 how I hate when Mark Ellis has to miss shows for stand-up. He missed the inception of the RB3 cam. He's missed so many great moments because of his stand-up schedule, putting him on the road on Thursdays throughout the weekend. So moving to Wednesdays means that we get more Mark Ellis. We get Mark and Kristian more often than not than we do now. So if you guys want Ellis on the show twice more per month, for 4 times per month, vote love it. Vote yes. Vote yes on moving to Wednesday. They are not strictly a movie show anymore. They used to do Thursday because it made sense with the fact that movies were coming out Thursday night. They were strictly movie talk. Well, now they're not strictly movie talk, so we don't have to be precious about that Thursday night. So I want Ellis on the show every week. This makes it possible. I assume you agree with me, Snelling.
I do agree with you. I mean, the Thursday show has its benefits. I like how it's more of a cap on the week, or at least right before you get to the weekend. But you're absolutely right. If you want more Ellis, then it makes absolute sense. Wednesday is also the day where they seem to have freed up their schedule. So I don't know if it was to put this show there, or like, I mean, we speculated that it could be some of this video game content, but it looks like, do you think this is one of those things that Kristian has already planned out, but he's just also curious what the fans think of it? Like, is it possible that this is already a done deal?
Probably. And there was a picture of Campea and Pamela Horton, the heir to the Tim Hortons restaurant franchise. He posted this picture, and it said something to the effect of, what could we be scheming? So we were supposed to get this announcement like 2 weeks ago, and yet for some reason we still haven't received it. But that show is definitely coming. So yeah, it's possible that may have influenced Kristian's decision to change the schedule of the Schmoes Know Show. But most importantly, I just want Mark Ellis there for every iconic moment that takes place. And for some reason, he misses a bunch of them. And I get it. He's a stand-up first, but there's no reason you can't be both. There's no reason we can't accommodate his schedule. This is for everyone's best interest, I think.
All right.
By the way, I have a quick history lesson of the week for you guys. As I just saw La La Land, it's as good as advertised, if not better. However, a former Schmoes Know guest, Jason Fuchs, had a brief appearance in the film. Fuchs used to be an actor, but then he turned his attention to screenwriting, and he was on Schmoes Know episode 218 to promote Pan, which he wrote. He also wrote Ice Age Continental Drift, the upcoming Luna Park that has Tom Cruise and Doug Liman attached, and he's supposedly writing a Minecraft movie. This was the same episode where Miri was announced as producer, and Team Schmoes also beat Miri and SPR in the Schmoedown. So that is your quick history lesson of the week.
Are we ready to put this recap to bed?
I am. I'm ready to go watch Rogue One for the third time.
I am seeing it for the third time on Christmas Day with my family. And given the fact that I enjoyed it more the second time, I'm hoping that the third time will make it even better, and I will catch more things and find more things to troll Kristian about, because that's been a lot of fun messing with him all week. So that's it for us, I guess. Brian Davids, where can the good people find you online?
Well, before we tell them that, what can they expect from us next week?
Oh, thank you so much. Because it's kind of important, isn't it? I think we're planning on it, so I'm hoping that we deliver. Next week is obviously the week leading up until Christmas. It's also the week that the Schmoedown Spectacular debuts. Myself, Brian Davids, and Aaron Turner, and I believe Paul Wolf will be combining forces into one show next week talking about the Schmoedown Spectacular. It will have some kind of goofy name. I assume maybe a Schmoeville Rundown or maybe something even worse than that.
Reputable Rundown. The Reputable Rundown Show.
That's another good idea. The worse the name is, the more I will enjoy it. But anyway, both shows will be combining forces, and we will talk everything Schmoedown Spectacular. Maybe get some other recap stuff, because from what I understand, Collider has some things going on still next week. But you guys will know. Yeah, you guys will know when we know, and hopefully we deliver on that episode, because all four of us are excited to have that sort of crossover event and bring that to you.
In a couple of weeks, we want to do our own best of episode. We'll cover any content that's on the air still, if there is any content on the air still besides nightmares and whatnot. But I want to go down like my 5 favorite moments of this year, Schmoes Know wise, and just any other things that come to mind like that.
Cool. So yeah, more stuff is coming at the end of the year. Coming, yeah.
Reputable?
More things are coming at the end of the year here as the year wraps up. 2016 has been very, very good to me. Not movie-wise, but personally it's been very good to me. I'll be sorry to see it go, but I'm excited to see... Shut up. I'm excited to see what 2017 brings for us and for our Schmoes and Collider video. Anyway, Brian Davids, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
You guys can follow me, the reputable Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at Film Schlubs, wherever podcasts are found, or you can simply find us at filmschlubspodcast.com.
Cool. And you can find me on Twitter at WhatUpSnell, and you can find me on the Sight and Sound podcast wherever podcasts are found, and also check out the Sight and Sound YouTube channel. Those links are all over my Twitter. If you follow me, you'll see that stuff. Well, if this is going up on Sunday, our Rogue One review will be out. And yeah, so come hang out with us and chat about Rogue One with us. Until next week, I'm Ryan Snelling.
And I'm Brian Davids.
Good night, or bye, Schmoeville.